welcome back. Ready to dive deep into another book.
Always excited to explore new ideas. What are we looking at today?
Today it's Love Your Work, Living Your Best Roles in Changing Times.
By Baha and Margaret Habashi, right?
Exactly. And I bet a lot of our listeners can relate to that title. This whole
Idea of navigating change in our work lives. It's something we all face, right?
absolutely. The world just never sits still. And this book promises a
Framework for making those changes feel a little less overwhelming. Plus, they've got
and really practical tools, which I know our listeners love.
yeah, the Habashis don't just talk theory. They give you ways to actually apply these ideas.
So, should we jump right in? What's the core of their approach to change?
Well, they break it down into a 5-step process. Makes it feel much more manageable.
Okay, I'm all about breaking things down. Walk us through these 5 steps.
Okay, so first, there's the idea spark. That's kind of the initial nudge.
The thing that makes you question what you're doing, right?
Exactly. It could be a conversation, an article, just something that sparks that thought. Like,
Wait a minute, maybe there's something more out there for me.
yeah, exactly that. Then comes desire, which is where that spark turns into.
Like a real longing for something different. You start to visualize a different path.
And then, this is where it gets real, you got to have a willingness to pay the price.
Ooh, that's a good one. Change isn't always easy or comfortable.
The Habashis are really upfront about that. There's
Yeah.
always a cost.
Right, and it's not always just about time and effort. Sometimes the price is emotional.
Totally. Like facing your fears,
Mhm.
stepping outside your comfort zone.
Or even social, like maybe distancing yourself from people who aren't supportive.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think people underestimate the most?
That's a good question. I'd say it's often the emotional toll change can bring up.
So much self-doubt. You start questioning yourself, wondering if you're making the right choice.
Yeah, and you have to be willing to push past that to embrace the unknown.
I remember when I was first thinking about quitting my corporate job to,
Oh yeah, you were gonna go freelance, right?
yeah, and the fear was huge, especially that financial instability. Took a lot of,
Still searching and planning, I bet.
oh, for sure. Plus lots of pep talks from my support system to actually take the leap. But looking back,
That willingness to pay the price, both financially and emotionally, it led to
some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. Okay, so we've got the spark, the desire.
the willingness to pay the price. What's next? Step 4, right?
Yeah, what's step 4?
The plan. This is where you get down to the nitty-gritty details.
Okay, so like outlining the specific steps, figuring out what resources you need, setting timelines.
Exactly. It gives you a roadmap, makes the whole process feel much less scary.
Because without a plan, change can feel so chaotic and overwhelming.
Totally. And then the final step, it's a big one, accepting inability sometimes.
Ooh, that's a tough one, but so important.
It's acknowledging that we can't control everything. Sometimes things just...
Don't work out the way we hope.
But here's the thing, the Habashis make this point that accepting that reality
Without letting it defeat us.
is actually key. It frees us up to move on and explore other possibilities.
It's like you can plan and prepare all you want, but life throws curveballs.
You got to be resilient, be able to adapt and adjust.
Okay, so we've got these 5 steps for embracing change. Now, the book also dives into,
A really interesting framework for figuring out what actually makes us happy at work.
yeah, they call it the 4 C's of job satisfaction. Sounds intriguing.
Think of it like a jigsaw puzzle. 4 key pieces that have to fit together. You got,
Competency, culture, chemistry, and compensation.
and just like a puzzle, if one piece is missing, the whole picture feels off.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's break down these 4 C's, starting with competency. What does that even mean?
It's more than just what you do. It's about your strengths, your talents, the things you're naturally good at.
But those strengths have to be relevant, right? Like in demand in the current job market.
Exactly. And the Habashis are big on this idea of skating to where the puck is going.
Oh, I love that analogy. So it's not enough to be good at what you do today. You have to
Be thinking about what skills you'll need to thrive tomorrow,
always be learning and growing. Never get complacent. That's a great takeaway for our listeners.
especially in today's world where things change so rapidly. Okay, next up we have culture. This one's all about
Finding a workplace that aligns with your values.
bingo. It's not just about perks and benefits. It's about feeling like you're part of something.
Something you believe in.
They even quote Jack Welch, who said, "People work for money, but they give their lives to purpose."
Wow, that's a powerful statement. So it's about finding that purpose alignment, both for yourself.
And for the organization you're part of.
I actually made that mistake once early in my career. took a job based purely on salary, and
Oh no, how'd that turn out?
it was miserable. The company culture was toxic, super competitive. I was constantly stressed out.
It's a classic example of why cultural fit matters. Money can only take you so far.
Totally agree. Okay, so we've got competency and culture. What's the third C?
Chemistry, all about relationships and communication in the workplace.
So, how you interact with colleagues, clients, even your boss.
Exactly. The Hayabashis talk about the importance of strong relationships at work,
And they even bring in Bob Beaudine's power of who, right? That whole idea of,
networking and building genuine connections,
so it's not just about what you know, but also who you know.
how you connect with them. Communication is key.
And then the final C is compensation. Now, we all know that includes salary, but
The Habashis dig a little deeper. They point out it's not just about the paycheck.
it's also about the emotional rewards of work, like feeling valued, appreciated.
And they bring in this idea of love languages in the workplace.
Oh, yeah, how different people feel appreciated in different ways. Like some people thrive on.
Words of affirmation, while others need acts of service or tangible gifts,
And they introduce this concept of a needs budget.
which is so helpful for overcoming that fear of financial instability.
Right. They use this analogy of an Egyptian farmer living off the previous season's harvest. It's about,
Contentment and trust.
yeah, like focus on what you truly need, not just what you want. Helps put things in perspective. Okay, so we've got these four C's: competency, culture, chemistry, compensation. But how do we put these concepts into practice? I guess that's for the next part of our deep dive.
Absolutely. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of the tools the Habashis provide. You ready?
Bring it on. I'm all about taking action. Okay, so we've got those four C's of job satisfaction: competency, culture, chemistry, and compensation. They sound great in theory, but how do we actually put them into practice?
Well, that's where the fun part comes in. The book is full of practical tools to help us actually find that sweet spot in our work lives.
Awesome. I know our listeners love that actionable advice. So which tool should we start with?
How about the role alignment tool? It's kind of like a regular tune-up, but for your work life. Like, you know how your car needs a checkup every now and then?
To make sure everything's running smoothly. Yeah, I get that.
It's the same with our careers. Things change, our priorities shift, and our work needs to keep pace.
So true. So how does this role alignment tool work? Walk us through it.
Well, you basically take a close look at your current reality. What are you actually spending your time on? And are those tasks aligning with your strengths, your values, even your goals?
Oh, I like that. Because sometimes it feels like we're just going through the motions, not really thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. And the tool helps you see those imbalances. Maybe you're spending too much time on things you hate or that don't really play to your strengths.
Or maybe we're stuck doing tasks that someone else could be doing, freeing us up for...
More fulfilling work.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this tool gives you a framework for adjusting your role, delegating tasks, or maybe even exploring new opportunities that are a better fit for you now.
It's like taking inventory of your work life and making sure it's reflecting the best version of yourself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Not who you were 5 years ago, but who you are now and where you want to be going.
Okay, love that. What's next?
All right, this next tool is the time budgeting tool. We budget our money, right? Why not our time?
It's our most valuable resource for sure. But honestly, thinking about budgeting my time makes me feel kind of stressed out.
I hear you. But don't worry, it's not about creating some crazy complicated system. It's more about awareness and intentionality.
So, what are some practical tips for actually doing this time budgeting thing?
The Habashis suggest starting by simply tracking your time for a week or two. Just see where it's actually going.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I bet we'd all be surprised by what we find.
Probably.
Yeah.
And then it's about prioritizing. What are the most important tasks that absolutely have to get it done? What can be delegated or maybe even eliminated altogether?
I'm already feeling more organized just thinking about it.
Right. And then here's a big one, scheduling in time for replenishment.
Replenishment, what do they mean by that?
It's about taking care of yourself, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Making sure you're not just constantly running on empty.
Oh, that's so important. I'm definitely guilty of burning the candle at both ends.
I think we all are, to some extent. But the Habashis remind us that rest and renewal aren't selfish, they're essential.
It's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Okay, I'm officially putting me time on my schedule this week.
Awesome. All right, next tool. This one's kind of fun. The love-hate inventory.
Okay, that sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
It's pretty simple. Just grab a piece of paper and make 3 columns. Love, hate, and meh.
Okay, I'm with you so far.
And then just start listing out all the tasks and responsibilities you have at work.
Oh, this is great. And be honest, right? Like brutally honest.
Totally. Get it all out on paper. You might be surprised by what you discover.
You know, when I did this exercise, I realized I was spending way too much time on things I absolutely hated. And the worst part was a lot of it could have been delegated or even eliminated.
It happens. But this tool helps you see that, and then you can start making changes.
Awesome. Okay, what's the final tool?
The roles profile tool. This one's about getting strategic and treating your different roles, both at work and in your personal life, kind of like projects.
Oh, I love that. So setting clear goals, outlining action plans, maybe even setting deadlines.
Exactly. It helps you move from feeling overwhelmed to feeling empowered.
Because it's not just about reacting to things, it's about proactively designing the life you want.
Yes. All right, so we've got this great toolkit, the role alignment tool, time budgeting, love-hate inventory, and the roles profile tool. But I'm curious, how do these actually play out in real life?
Well, the Habashis provide some really compelling case studies in the book. They introduce us to two characters, Sandy and Alan, who are dealing with challenges a lot of us can relate to.
Yeah, their stories are so good. Should we start with Sandy?
Yeah, let's dive into her story and see how she uses these tools.
Okay, so on the surface, Sandy seems like she's got it all. Successful career, loving family, financial stability, but she's feeling unfulfilled.
Oh, I think so many people can relate to that. Like, you're checking all the boxes, but something's still missing.
Exactly. So she starts by using the role alignment tool to really assess her current situation. She realizes that her role, while comfortable and secure, isn't really lighting her up anymore.
So she decides to make a change.
She does. But first, she has some honest conversations with her husband. They even go on a retreat, just the two of them, to really carve out space for those important discussions about their shared vision for the future.
I love that they prioritize that time together. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and neglect those big picture conversations.
Yeah, and during the retreat, they use the wellness gauge and marriage health check tools to get a holistic perspective on their well-being.
So it's not just about Sandy's career goals, it's about how those goals fit into the larger context of her life.
Exactly. And that retreat helps them get clear on their priorities and make sure they're on the same page.
So once Sandy has that clarity, what does she do?
She decides to explore new job opportunities, but she's strategic about it. She connects with some close friends who become her support system.
Oh, having that support system is so important when you're making big changes.
Absolutely. And she leverages her network, updates her LinkedIn profile, preps for interviews. She treats her job search like a project, just like the roles profile tool suggests.
She's walking the walk, not just talking about it, but actually taking action.
And here's what I love about her approach. She's really intentional about communicating her non-negotiables to potential employers. Things like work-life balance, company culture, opportunities for growth.
She's not settling for just any job. She's looking for a place where she can truly thrive.
Exactly. Okay, now let's talk about Alan. His story takes a bit of a different turn.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell us about Alan.
Alan's a passionate guy working as an independent missionary. He's dedicated to his work, but he's also burning himself out.
Ooh, that's something a lot of us can relate to, especially those of us in helping professions. That tendency to give and give until we're running on fumes.
Totally. And Alan's a classic case of what the Habashis call title-imposed roles. He's taking on more and more responsibility without creating a sustainable structure or seeking support.
So he's basically drowning in work.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's taking a toll on his health, his relationships, everything.
Does he realize he needs to make a change?
He does eventually, but it takes a pretty serious wake-up call from his doctor.
Oh, wow. So what does he do?
Well, he starts using some of the tools we talked about, like the wellness gauge and the time budgeting tool. He realizes he's neglecting his health, his sleep is all over the place, and he's not spending quality time with his loved ones.
He's basically sacrificing everything for his work.
Yeah. And then he does the love-hate inventory, and that's a real eye-opener. He realizes he's spending way too much time on administrative tasks he hates, instead of focusing on the work that actually energizes him.
So he knows he needs to make some changes, but how does he actually go about doing that?
He tries to delegate tasks, he tries to set boundaries, but sadly, his story doesn't have a happy ending.
Oh no. What happens?
Despite his best efforts, he ultimately succumbs to the pressure of his work culture and neglects his own well-being.
That's so sad. Why wasn't he able to create lasting change?
The Habashis point to a few factors. He struggled to redefine his role and let go of that doer mentality. He didn't have a strong support system to help him stay accountable. And there was a lack of organizational support for his efforts to create a more sustainable work life.
So it was like he was trying to change within a system that wasn't set up to support those changes. That's a really important point.
It is, and Alan's story is a cautionary tale about the importance of not just making changes, but creating a sustainable structure and support system to maintain those changes.
We need to be mindful of the environments we're in and whether they're conducive to our well-being. Sometimes it's not enough to just change ourselves. We might need to change our surroundings as well. Okay, so we've got Sandy, who successfully navigates a career transition and finds work that she loves. And then we have Alan, who tragically burns out despite his best efforts. What key takeaways should our listeners be thinking about based on these two contrasting stories?
I think the biggest takeaway is that change is a process, and it's not always easy. We need the right tools, a willingness to do the inner work, and a supportive environment.
And Alan's story highlights the importance of self-care. It's not selfish, it's essential.
Absolutely. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't effectively serve others or fulfill our purpose.
Okay, so we've covered the 4 Cs, the tools, the case studies. Is there anything else we should touch on?
Well, the Habashis bring in one more element that I think is really unique and important. They talk about the role of faith in our work lives.
Oh, yeah. That's something you don't often see in career development books. Ready to dive into that?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
it's a really valuable conversation to have.
Okay, so we're going to get into this whole idea of faith and work, which isn't always something you see in career advice, but it's
Definitely a big part of life for many people. And I think what's cool is the Habashis.
aren't pushing any specific beliefs, but they're recognizing that for a lot of us.
Our faith is a part of who we are, and it influences the choices we make.
Exactly. And our work is a big part of our lives, so it makes sense that our faith would play a role there too. So how do they actually...
Bring these two worlds together. Well, one thing they talk about is seeking God's guidance in your career.
like praying for clarity, trusting your intuition, that kind of thing?
Exactly. And also viewing your work as a form of service, a way to use your talents.
To make a positive impact, to contribute to something bigger than yourself.
Right. It's
Wow.
not just about earning a paycheck. It's about finding that sense of meaning and purpose.
I love that. And even if someone listening isn't particularly religious, I think there's still a lot of wisdom in that.
Oh, absolutely. That idea of connecting your work to something you believe in, something that gives you a sense of...
Fulfillment, something that makes you feel like you're making a difference.
Exactly. And the Habashis pose this really great question to get us thinking about this. How has your faith influenced your career choices? And what role do you see it playing in future changes?
That's a powerful question. And even if you don't use the word faith, just replacing that with values or beliefs, it still really makes you...
Pause and reflect. What truly matters to you, and how is that showing up in your work?
I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. Really sit with that question for a while.
It might lead to some surprising insights. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we did a deep dive into the 4 Cs, those practical tools, the case studies, and even this whole...
Intersection of faith and work. It's been a really rich conversation.
Definitely. And one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of change as a process. The Habashis emphasize this throughout the book. It's not a one-time event. It's an ongoing...
Journey of learning and growing and adapting.
Yeah,
And I think that can be both exciting and a little scary, right?
for sure. But they give us such a great roadmap for navigating that journey with those practical tools and that encouraging perspective.
Right. And I think the other big takeaway is self-care isn't selfish. It's actually essential if we want to.
Live our best lives, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think the Hamashi sum it up beautifully with this line, God is too wise to waste pain. And even if you're not coming from a faith perspective...
There's so much wisdom in that statement.
Right.
Those challenges we face, those difficult times, they can actually...
shape us and teach us and lead us to something even better than we could have imagined.
It's a powerful reminder that there's always hope, even when things feel tough.
Absolutely. So if you're feeling stuck or uninspired by your work, or just curious about how to create a more fulfilling and aligned career, we highly recommend checking out Love Your Work by Baha and Margaret Habashi.
It's a fantastic resource filled with practical advice and inspiring stories to help you find work that you truly love.
And as always, thank you for joining us on this depth dive. We hope you found it insightful and encouraging.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.